Okay, we got to cut off the redaction and contrast described in the Scythian. As soon as it's 3:10 movie. Okay, in a short time, we returned to the get research search in the northeast and the northeast west islands and entered the land which is now called Scotland. So, so also called as the Scottish, we will have it to Scotia, but many gay writers have stumbled at a certainty of the story, yet I find it's certain that the island was called Scotia Major. The other Scotia Minor. And the authors confusedly uh, the one taken to the other, and the words to be not great antiquity. Capgrave in the life of the Saint Columbians, safe Ireland of old was called Scotland, but which the Scottish nation inhabited in Albania, next to the Great Britain, now called Scotland, took the original uh, Farseus and Hermiti beginning as a bishop, and Farseus and Herm- Hermite beginning. I don't know what that means. I had to check that out too. We got these books somewhere, man. You read too much, man. You sometimes you lose more than you take in, man. You can push some shit right back out the other side. I do remember this shit though. Island of the Scots Island King of Alfred's translated the history of Aureus into the Saxon tongue to mean that the Scots and the Scythians, the borders of Scotland, call them to this day. The Scythes and the Scyts, Wellington writes one of the country called Scythia or also Scythia. We have Scythia, Scythia, Scotius, Scotus, or Scotia. Rampulius monks of Chester's right to Sir John Trevisi, the priest of the old English laid it down, the Scots being called as it were the Scyths, for they came out of Scythia. Matthew's monks of Windsor say example Picts and Hibernesius, Hibernesius, Scotardinium, Hibertinia, Chrysia, Diversius, Napoleonius, Compacti, Scott, Ennius, L. Dictero, Codex, Diverse, Rebus, in Unum, Arcurium, Congregator, Deer, Vero, Terra, Ile, Qua, Purius, Albania, bullshitty, more bullshit, bullshit. Picts and Irish and Scots had that. These niggas, the back then they was extra. Cool, and freeze that time. Hundreds of years, when the Picts and the Scots came into another, when the Saxons came in afterwards, we have a wicked Frenchman, usually termed as Normans. He brought over some of the best blood in England. While the sword business continued, the English continued to deteriorate, and the new blood had to be brought over at various times. So I think I have proved not only that the Englishman is an inferior character, but that present day he is absolutely nowhere. It appears to me that go we might go on to discussing this question till doomsday arriving at no result if we follow it in the manner in which we have done. This evening I have not had an advantage of hearing Dr. Hunt's lecture. Consequently, I can speak in reference to some of the remarks made this evening. insert it from a lighter. All right, we back with it, man. I do not disagree with him as so much as the statement, as in the use as he made it to them when we're talking anatomy and the physiologically as on. There are two questions. First, as to the accuracy of the facts, and as it is still more important one as us made of those facts. As a general rule, I have little or nothing to object to the fact, but I have everything to object to the influence. It is one thing to bring in a series of minutes of observation in reference to some particular part of the skull, to some bones or something, or some kind of quiet, or another thing to assume importance of the difference. It is something to say that the difference of an inch of a certain bone or a certain angle of another thing is to say is to such extreme. There's Scotia. The Gulf Voyage from Egypt, 15th century manuscript by Walter Bauer. Transmitted to the Scotch remark on the border of grain, was formerly quoted the text conclusions, namely that the worst type of Picts has a long a, I don't know what that was. People like the cave dwelling cannibals of Saint Vigians of flourished in the 14th century were eventually captured and burned alive. People or like those of the Swan district of Galloway Coast, only to the furious, untamable, most generally have been quite extreme, incessant, and reliant, seeing tribe and tribe century after century tell plainly of a continued on of fierce elements of these races, where two tribes equally lived in the same district in the same state, continual antagonism. It is their numbers would be constantly being thinning, or would be. It looks like it says fiercely something on the mountains of Marshall District, long surrounding, had been settled by people peaceful tendencies. Whether these we I can't see a cream of the older savages in the clan had either, including the Northumberland. This will be apparently and presently. Surnames do not from reliable support in any genealogical inquiry. Still over a great stretch of time, the Douglas and the Galloways may be founders of a line of Scots or of Moors, of the MacDub or the Dub Gales, or of any of the similar names already sufficiently reiterated, and for from any one of these many branches of innumerable Robertson, Dickerson, Thompson, Wilson. These son families may be, as Dr. John learned, alternately called Johnson, uh, Mac, uh, Mackin, which later the name is one of the most popular style Gaelic, but which may be filthy called Older English or Old Dutch, since the Maga or the Magaphon, the son of the Jan, or the postery of the two brothers may become known in the one line as Saunders and Saundersons, and in the other the MacAllister, which again, as a man may have received the surname of his feudal superior without having the slightest relationship to his lord. A Douglas man was not necessarily a Douglas strictly so called. Therefore, it was to be somewhat rash to conclude that the modern day people are the people, because the Moors had people under subjugation, and if you're under that certain Moor or a certain feudal lord at that time, you were considered his baby. So you see a lot of people coming around with last names like that. They took on that name. You know what I mean? It wasn't. White people didn't have last names back then till the Moors came. That's what I always say. Them last names ain't white people last names. But that's other conversations. We could trace the ancestry of the daughter of an Egyptian from Scotia. The Moses connection to Scotia. The story of Scotia begins with the Greek king by the name of Gaethelios. And one version of the story, which involves Ireland, Gaethelios is known as Gada Halls or Glass or the Gales. It is said to have derived from his name and was originally from the region of Scythia. It is also called the Gadaels of the Glass, lived during the time of Moses and later is said to have cured the former when he was bitten by a serpent. Scotia, by another name, not everyone agrees that the Scots originated from Scythia. However, one writer, for instance, speculated that the Gaeltaps and the Gauls of the Glass were neither a Greek king nor a Scythian, but Egyptian pharaoh himself. In Scotia, Egyptian queen of the Scots, Ralph illustrates the story of Scotia back to Gaethelios in the 3rd century BC and the Mantheos Aegyptica. It suggests that the Africans thought that the loincloth that the South Americans were wearing were fish scales. They thought that the South Americans were half man, half fish gods. That the leader of the African groups were a young hunter called Khufu. Khufu was a obvious leader. He was tall and very physical. The Africans had an abundance of wild grain. Khufu uh, signaled to the gods to wait for them. That the African men walked away. Soon they returned with several women carrying large baskets filled with grain. The women were fascinated at the sight of the red men. The women poured the grain into the raft, and there were more grain than the raft could carry, and the gods disappeared into the river. After the red gods left, the Africans placed some more baskets filled with grains on the banks of the river. The case for the gods returned. They were right, the gods did return. In a few days, the South Americans returned with several large rafts looking for more grains. There was a long line of basso rafts snaking down the river. The Africans harvested grain day and night. Word went out to all other African groups that the river gods, the famous scene of the north, Metubu Hava, is often used to illustrate the Egyptian campaign against the Sea People and what has come to be known as the Battle of the Delta. Willis, the company hieroglyphs, did not name the Egypt enemies, describing the simple as being from the North countries. Earlier scholars noted that the similarities between the hairstyles and the accessories worn of the combatants and the other reliefs in which such groups are named. The Sea People are a purported seafaring confederation attacked Egypt and other regions of the Eastern Mediterranean prior into the during the Late Bronze Age collapse following. The earliest ethnics later considered among the Sea People is believed to be attested in Egypt hieroglyphs as the Abishamu obelisk found in the Temple of Obelisk at Babylus by Maurice Banu. Inscription mentions, we don't know what the hell that is, known son of Kuku, son of Luke, translated as Kulinus, son of Luca, the Lichen. The date is given variously, 2000 to 1700 BCE. Okay. They're traveling day for in search for these crops in the wild. In fact, the traditional culture practiced amongst the native South American tribes and some of the African tribes suggests that this tradition may have been started by women while the men were out foraging for crops and animals. The women cultivated some of the easier crops. Before long, women started to practice nurturing baby animals until they became adult animals before they were eaten. Agriculture was born. The advent of agriculture was made it possible for the early South Americans to live in one place for prolonged periods of time. The constant interaction between human living in large groups in the same place for prolonged periods of time eventually led to the evolution in technology. It is difficult to estimate the time frame in which primitive technology in South America began. It is also not certain how it began. However, about 10,000 years ago, the native South Americans began evolving an amazing technological base. Before long after they had, what's up, baby? Before long, it started been advanced civilization. The ancient South Americans were incredibly indigenous. About 8,000 years ago, they had built an advanced civilization from scratch. Archaeological evidence indicated that the center of the great civilization was present day Peru. Perhaps the most important invention of the ancient South Americans was clothing. It was the ancient South Americans who invented the cotton based clothing as, as well known as it today. Native South American inventions. It's probably this great invention that the South American Indians are one people who ever, only people who ever built pyramids at the height of their civilization. Dead kings and queens were honored with the pyramids. A pyramid is a tomb. They believe that the kings and the queens who were buried in the magnificent pyramids turned into gods, and when they died, they built pyramids not only to their land but also in the other parts of the world where at some time they established a settlement. Contrary to the popular beliefs, pyramids were built with the use of machines. The boulders were first manufactured and allowed to dry in the sun. The dry, strong boulders were then hoisted into place through the use of man-powered machines. The machines were made from wood and ropes. The machines were very sophisticated and very powerful. The technology behind the boulder making and hoisting machines have been lost to humanity. All attempts to identify the ancient technology has been not been successful. This is partly due to the fact that the pyramid building was deeply religious activity. Only a few people selected by the gods learned the technology. Another great invention of the ancient South Americans was the art of the boat building and the sailing. The ancient South Americans invented boats and rafts. They were the first to. Well, I didn't get the rest of that, but we'll get the rest of this book. Wakatango A Bongo. I'm saying the first humans who left Africa to escape the relentless African forest floated on tree logs to the land that today referred to as South America. You see how they always try to make it out of Africa. The South American continent experiences such climatic changes. The African continent experienced the opposite direction. Like African continent, the South American continent goes from land that is almost lost its forest, blah blah blah. This ain't got nothing to do with, like you said, this is cutting out the whole Atlantis. He is not subscribing to the Atlantis or the Mu theory or the world is all autonomous or created at once to rule a certain part, and the people's ability not to respect another man's territory is what caused all this. The Nubian successors to Egypt were amazingly rich history. The Nubian empire also outlines the decline and the collapse of the Nubian empire, and second, the southward migration of the ancient Egyptians, and subsequently rise of the great empire of Ghana and Mali, and the interactions between these two empires and the South American Indians. The rich history of these two empires, this volume also outlines an introduction of Islam into Africa and the rise and the collapse of Timbuktu, the capital of Mali, and the greatest city in all human history. In Volume 3 outlines the characteristics of the sudden collapse of the pyramid civilization. 7,000 years ago, the interaction ended with the South American Indians died out settling in the 16th and 17th centuries. A strong cultural similarity between the Africans and the South Americans have largely been ignored. The similarities between the native South Americans' agriculture and the African agriculture has largely been ignored. The similarities between the African culture practice and some of the native South American cultures practice have been ignored. The similarities between the native South American agriculture and the traditions of agriculture in some part of Africa have been ignored. Did he just write that? Am I reading that over and over again? Y'all know I might be going crazy. The American name and the African names have been ignored. The fact that the pyramids exist only in South America, Africa, and the Middle East have been ignored. Even a recent discovery of ancient South American Indians cave paintings depicting Negroes have been ignored. The lack of interest in the evidence may have been the result of the fact that the Westerners are afraid to confront the possibility that there were South American Indians and North Africans at the time as the pyramids were built. Excuse me, y'all. The objective of the book is to bring the true history of the African continent and African people to the modern world. The account will narrate the details of the origin of the human civilization, the introduction of the civilization of Africa, the rise of ancient Egypt, and subsequent rich history. For 100 years have been a nightmare of the African people considered the kind of civilization that the early Africans enjoyed in 6,000 or so years prior to that. There is an abundance of culture and technological evidence in South America and Africa that strongly suggests that there was a long interaction between the Africans and South American Indians. However, the anthropologists and historians have traditionally not been interested in the evidence. African historians appear not to be aware of the long interaction that the two places between the South American Indians and the Africans starting about 7,000 years ago. The interaction ended when the South American Indians died out settling in the 16th and 17th centuries. The strong cultural similarities between Africa and South America were largely been ignored. The similarities between the native. Okay, yeah, we did that. But my boy doing all that repeating. Let's go to the next book. Here go our South American boatmen. So as you can see, the sea people, as we were depicting, they came on rafts from South America over to Africa and the rest of the world in the Mediterranean. So this is who they were seeing. Sorry, the picture kind of crappy. Let's see if we do another one. The Golden Man, El Dorado. They call him the Mushika. I like to call him the Moshe or the Moche. This is them, the Kings of Bling. The Legend of El Dorado. We're going to get into that in a second. Let's see, this is Anatolia. This is a coin of Alexander the Great with the Bantu knots with the nappy head. We ain't even going to go there just yet. We'll be back. So Francis Drake, we already know from Drake's Jewel, bro ain't look nothing like that. This is why they joined sides with Cortez whenever we got here, because this is what we was doing. Some of this stuff ain't got nothing to do with America, but the surrounding. This is the Moche powder. This is Hawaii. King Kamehameha and the rest of the homeboys. You know what I'm saying? You see everybody out there. They got the same sword as a Mayan would have. Ain't that right? Same sword. Captain Cook getting that ass whooped. Let's take us around all this simultaneous. America, the New World, Grand Copyright Privileges, July, Amsterdam, 1670. Poor, likewise identified as Florida tribe is not given. This man would not be the Seminoles of the Temuquans. Them is the Temuquans. You see by the leg wearing the chest plates. Good likeness of Central Negro, 30 years of age, light, very black complexion, good teeth, uh, corpulent but well formed, and affecting, I can't see, the position of his body of such Walker who is absent himself. Man, these old words supposed to have been evangelized in the way of some. I can't. Alright, we got the King of California. As you can see, we got more. Okay, we got the King of California. And his homies all pressing. Admiral Drake. They keep trying to make Drake look like this white boy. We got the, and this is the Carib Islands. Said it was cannibals, so this could have been here. Yeah, the mosquitoes, the Caribs. They're always trying to make them out to be cannibals. Patagonia says to be South America. They were. These are the Digger Indians here on the right. Can't remember what tribal boy is from on the left, but we could look it up. I guess. Maybe Papo Dugetti. Guess. Beautiful people in the Solomon Islands, man. Beautiful people all over the world, man. We just gotta understand the connection. Stop using stupid ass bywords. Who's this? Homeboy looking. He looking like a homie. This gotta be somewhere in Africa. I've never even heard of Calabar. Okay, Congo, Nigeria. All right. The chief of Calabar important to embarking before. Okay, I don't have much, and you could barely read it. It's all smushed up against the side. We got to go back. I fucked that up. But, oh well, we ain't gonna get lost on that. At the headhunters. Care of headhunters. I get a kick out of this. The wonderful Algonquin family. It's supposedly from Madagascar. We had who they were calling your Ladinos, your Moors, you had the South American Indians. The Ladinos having a celebration on the square, smoking, playing their strings, you feel me? Tobacco, pure tobacco. Peru mummies. Now, as we look at this, who do we know with hair like this besides Hindus? The untouchables. Just reading over this, we just belly flopping all over the place today. This is just doing. Uh, it says the Black Tube country lies north of this. The history of the Eastern barbarians says the 40 Li or Li in the east of Japan. There is a country called the Naked People country. And the southeast of this lies the Black Tube country. A ship can reach its sailing for 1 year. The account of strange things says the Western butchers dye their teeth and are like these people. These people are black and eat rice. They also eat serpents, some red, some green. An authority mentions only the green serpents. It is very great. One authority says that the north of the country is Shuhai, and the people with black hands who eat rice and who use serpents, one serpent being red. Below it is the warm springs, Tiang Ravine, the ravine. There is hot water above the warm springs ravine, Fusang. Sang tree is useful, mulberry tree. Underneath the mulberry tree, where we heard that. gonna try to find this book, but we're gonna keep it moving. The place where the ten sons bathe lies north of the Black Teeth country. In the water there is a large tree having 9 suns in it. The lower branches and the one sun is in the upper branches, says the form of these 10 suns rose all together, and the grass and the trees were burned. Withered says that the emperor, when the commanded the prince, I took to shoot 9 of the 10 suns and the birds in the sun until dead. This disposition of the sorrow says in reference to it that I brought the sunbird to an end, and that I dropped some of its feathers and I took them home and kept them. The classic says, formerly this I shot skillfully, and I brought these 10 suns to an end. Kinsu Bamboo says, when Yin K ascended to the throne and dwelt Sai-Ho, there were strange prodigies, 10 suns rose and shone together. And this was a wonder of nature, but there is proof of it. Tradition says that there were 10 suns in the sky, and the number of suns being 10, this account says 9 of the suns dwell in the lower branches of the sun, and the upper branches. The classic Great Waste says, when the sun set, another sun rises and lights the heavens and the earth, and although there are 10 suns, they rise uh, alternately and so revolve and shine, but at the time referred to, they all rose together, and so heaven sent down supernatural calamities. Therefore, I have and asked for Yao's instruction, and throughout that understanding, his heart desired to look upon the heavens and pull the bowstring. 9 suns retired and concealed themselves. If we examine into this a common sense, we find that it is not reasonable, but if we investigate the principles of the density, we find that nothing is impossible. You who stand by and see ought to try to comprehend this mystery. Those things which relate to the mysteries and obscure are hard to understand, but nevertheless they go on their courses without obstruction. Yushi's concubine dwells north of this. Yushi is the same as Ping and god of rain. A man is black, and in each of his hands he holds a serpent, and in his left ear there is a green serpent, and in his right ear there is a red serpent. The authority says that they dwell north of the country of the 10 suns, that as a man he has a black body and a human face, and that each hand holds a tortoise. The Black Hip country lies north of this, called because the people are all black below the waist. These people make clothing for water animals or fish. They make clothing from skin of fish or water animals. They eat gulls. Gulls are water birds. Their name is pronounced U. They use 2 birds carrying them in their arms. And authority says this lies north of Yushi's concubine. Johansson name should be read the Cacao people instead of the Lao. I think the Laos, I think I have a couple friends that's Lao. This story says people lied to the north, the hairy people, and their people having their faces and eyes and hands and feet entirely black. How did these people become white? Let's just get this book. Cacao applied to the Mohammedans. Mm, a sect is applied to them. Okay, they count as being the bird body and human face having a serum, and the fact that the Aleutian Islanders dressed in their skins of birds. The eastern seas is the term applied to the seas of the east coast of China. Okay, okay. Andaman Islanders. They're talking about the Andaman Islanders. No, we already got that. Great Men Country of Toussaint Dowling's second period is distinguished by the designation Yunkai. They were ducks collected by Naponpo, 20 leagues south the district of Xinjiang. We ain't gonna get too deep into this shit, I don't see. Okay, let's say a man named Chifu Young picked up a wooden arrow and a point was 6 feet and a half long. Reckoning the length of the arrow, the shooter must have been a rod of 5 or 6 feet tall. The Koreans say that formerly some people from the kingdoms of Japan who encountered bad weather upon a voyage were blown across the Great Sea, and beyond it is discovered a country where the people were all a rod tall, and moreover, in their form and appearance they looked like Mongols. They were tall savages of a foreign tribe. The arrows came from this country. The one shouldn't say that the shortest of the scorched pygmy people were only 3 feet high, and the tallest of these did not exceed the 10 rods. The Horseshoe album of gems is said to 90,000 in Norfolk. Bungalow range of the mountains along the whole country is found. And the people of 30 rods tall lived for 18,000 years, but they died east of Queen Blue Mountains. They found these people are 10 rods tall, all wear plain garments. Then 10 times, then 10,000 li to the east is a country Tailao people is found. There are 30 rods or 5 feet tall. East of this 10 times 1,000 li is central 10 country whose people are 1 rod tall. The Kongu history says that the body of the tall savages measured crosswise covered 9 Chinese acres. When riding, his head and his shoulders reached above the crossbar of the chariot. This man must therefore have been several rods tall in the time of Tuslan. The Chinese foot is equal to the 14 of our inches. Of 10, the term the Great Sea is loosely applied to the Pacific Ocean and China seas. So we're talking about they came to America. The character Yao is translated to pygmy. It's applied to the nation of pygmies. Said to be 3 feet in height, called Yao Yao, found southwest of China. These Negritos or Papuans or New Guineas may have been intended. Yeah, I'm talking about the Negritos. The scene of giants was seen in Lao Tao when 5 rods tall and 5 prints of 6 feet. And it counts if considered true. And then there are no limits to the height of all the tall men. The great men marking, which is called the great men's mansion. This mountain was called the name because it resembled a large mansion. The men collect near it and market times and hold a market upon and about it. It is a great man crouching upon both of its sides. Perhaps the character translated to crouching formerly meant sitting erect, Indian style. In the country of little people who are called the Tsing people, the poem Tsing or Shang Wu says that the farthest regions of the northeast is habited by people who are only 9 inches in height. Its god has a human face and a wild beast body, and he calls Ling Lang body. This is the mountain called Kui, from which the Aspen River flows. There is also a country of plants where millet is used for food. So that'd be corn. They talking about America. It said millet grows in this country. The name of this country in the province of Wei. Employ or have 4 species of birds. They have numerous varieties of birds, also tigers, perhaps brown bears, grizzly bears. In the Great Waste, there is a mountain called Ho Ho. It is a place where the sun and the moon rise. It has Chung Yang's country. Tensu, the emperor's son, begot Chung Yong country. To sing the emperor Sun begot Chung of tree. This in the country are red trees with dark wood, which have delicious flowers and fruit. See Lu Shi's edition of the work of Confucius called Spring and Autumn. They use 4 birds, i.e., they have numerous species of birds, and also panthers, tigers, brown bears, and grizzly bears. There are also mountains of the eastern pass, and they have and pass, and here is a country of refined gentlemen. These people have clothing, caps, sashes, and swords. They have tigers and panthers with gentle and which are gentle and give way. Here is the country of presiding spirits who begot the okay. The main Minshu is north of the great goat, nearly as large as a donkey is produced. So horses, they got horses. Without spirit presiding, spirits have offering, but the pure-minded male has no wife, the pure-minded female has no husband. It said that these people are pure. What they say about Queen Califia? It's the presiding spirits have offspring, but the pure-minded male has no wife, and the pure-minded female has no husband. It says these people are pure in their thought and are not affected by passion and do not mate, but that they conceive children with all purity, like white doves, looking steadily into each other's eyes, each being affected by the purity of the other. They eat millet and the wild beasts, and they have numerous variety of birds. Here, Tile Mountain, the mountain of the great ridge and the great waste. There's a mountain of Minsing, the bright star. Is this place where the sun and the moon rise? This is also the white people's country. Tensu begot the white people. The white people have no surnames. They eat millet and have numerous varieties of birds, as well as tigers, panthers, brown bears, and grizzly bears. And they have a team of yellow birds, and which are drive using them in order to reach the great age. Okay, I think we're talking about Europe or Northern Asia, because they got the grizzly bear, and they might be talking about the Siberian tiger and the North Star and the white dove. Yeah, this has to be. And the black teeth. We just seen the black teeth. So basically, it's calling these people the vassal country. Wow. Okay, they're also the Green Hills country. The Fox and Nine Tails, when they were little, they disturbed, they came out of their holes. And this is considered a good omen. And Japheth continues vassal. They lived in a country of luxurious land, luxuriant, irrigated. The name is pronounced Ying, the country of black teeth. Their teeth are like lacquer. They begot the black teeth as a teaching example of the sage. You do not reach all religions, therefore, in after ages, he descends and differ in their pursuit of an outward appearance. Everyone says that those who are now living are his descendants, but they surely cannot be uh, posterity which he himself begot. The tribe eats millet for food. They have numerous varieties of birds. Here also, I chew the summer islands country. Here's also. Let's go back and do some more research. But this was fun. I just wanted to dig into this book a little bit. It was some shit I was seeing. I just thought it was just odd, man. I never heard no shit like this. Maybe I wasn't wrong. Okay, when you talking about the black Mongols or the car, you know what I'm saying, the car, the Kittian. We're talking, the Karyats. You speak of these people in history, and they say a Mongol, this is who they talking about, the Sandman. So when they say they came to America and they seen Mongols, this is what they mean. The black men of South America. This is who they consider the Negrito, the man of the. And this ain't. You can see that this is beginning with the mix. You know, you see them pictures they showed us earlier. They tried to play us off like that's what they meant. This is, you know what I'm saying? The shit get out of control sometimes. But this is just a little side note. This is, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna call this 3.5. This is just some little shit, you know what I'm saying? I threw together for it in the morning. We'll be back.